Get ready for some huge changes. Social Security is getting a massive update. Section 8 is looking at making some radical changes, and we've got all the details on how this could affect your wallet. But that's not all. We're also going to dive into other crucial updates, local resources like food pantries and legal aid, and even a few ways that you might be able to put some extra cash in your pocket. Grab a pen and paper because this news could just change your life. So let's start with that Social Security change. If you've applied for disability lately, you may have noticed that the process is pretty much ridiculous. You have to jump through a lot of different hoops to get the benefits that you deserve. And step 5 might just be the most ridiculous of them all. That's when the Social Security workers determine if there's literally any job that you could be doing for money. Now, the problem is that they base those decisions off of a huge database that hasn't been updated since 1977. That's almost 50 years ago. The world has obviously changed a lot since then. After all, back in 1977, computers were the size of refrigerators and most people didn't even own one. The world has clearly changed a lot since then, and so has the work that we do in our society. So let's illustrate this with an example. The Washington Post recently highlighted a story about a former electrician who applied for Social Security. His claim was denied because the Social Security Administration determined that, he could still get work as a nut sorter, dowel inspector, or egg processor. But those jobs aren't really common these days. So this story, of course, got a lot of attention, sparked some outrage, and that prompted the Social Security Administration to take some action. They recently released an emergency memo that clarified how this works. They said that to determine that someone is not disabled, workers must be able to support that finding with evidence that the applicant can adjust to work that actually exists in significant numbers in the national economy. Jobs like nut sorters aren't really available in significant numbers these days, so they should not be counted or used against people who are trying to get disability benefits. So as a result, the Social Security Administration has removed 114 different jobs from their potential jobs list. The jobs that they removed include things like astronomer, genealogist, radio station operator, telegrapher, fur farmer, wood model maker, camera repairer, clock barrel assembler, I don't know what that is, and motorboat operator. A lot of the jobs that were included in the list were related to running telegraphs or fixing cameras or doing other things that have basically been replaced by the modern smartphone. Now, if you want to apply for Social Security or appeal a disability denial that you've received, our sponsor Injury Claims may be able to help you with that. Just head over to lirlinks.com/claims, scroll to find the section titled Injury and Disability, and choose one of the options in that section to get started. Now, let's talk about the changes that are coming to Section 8, because this is huge and honestly really exciting. So we've talked a lot about housing challenges on this channel. Section 8 takes years to get, and once you get it, it's really hard to use. Lots of landlords simply refuse to accept the vouchers because they don't want to deal with the hassle of the inspections and the paperwork and all of the hoops that they have to jump through to be able to take that money. As a result, only around 60% of people who get Section 8 are actually able to find a landlord who will take that voucher. That's barely more than half, and it's really discouraging for people who have waited ages to get the help that they need. The system is clearly broken, and it sounds like the agency in charge knows that, because it sounds like it might be getting a massive overhaul. Brian McCabe is the HUD Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy Development. He recently attended a National Guaranteed Income Conference in Detroit. At the conference, he announced that HUD, that's the organization in charge of Section 8, is considering making a major change. Instead of the voucher model that we all know and hate, HUD is actually thinking about just giving out cash to those who qualify for Section 8. The hope is that more landlords would be willing to work with Section 8 renters if there weren't so many hoops and so much red tape that they have to get through. They're also hoping that renters would have access to better housing if they were using cash instead of these vouchers. Now, before they make any big changes, HUD will need to go through quite a bit of process. They have to gather public feedback first. Brian said that the agency plans to start seeking public feedback soon. If it sounds like something people want and they think that it will succeed, HUD will then probably start with some limited testing of the new system before launching it on a bigger scale. So these changes are not necessarily something that's going to come very quickly, but this is still a huge change that could make a tremendous impact for the families who need help. The need for affordable housing has never been greater. In fact, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition recently released their Out of Reach report. This is a report that they put out every single year, and the purpose of it is to study how affordable or unaffordable housing is in the United States. Their report always calculates what they call a housing wage, and that can be a little bit confusing, but basically it's the amount of money that a full-time worker would need to make in order to afford housing on their own. The housing wage assumes that someone is working full-time hours and spending just 30% of their income on housing, which makes sense because most landlords want you to make 3 times the rent anyway, right? So that's important because I'm going to explain to you what they found in terms of housing wages. So the 2024 report found that the average worker must make $32.11 per hour to rent a modest 2-bedroom rental home. In order to afford a 1-bedroom home, that worker would have to make $26.74 per hour. That is a lot of money, and it makes paying for housing very stressful and, like the report says, out of reach for a lot of Americans. Now, honestly, paying for just about everything these days is stressful. There is some good news coming from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that may help, though, and I'm really excited about this news as well. So to explain what's happening, we're going to have to take a little trip backwards because the story begins clear back in 2019. That's when the CFPB decided that something needed to be done about payday loan companies and installment loan companies. These companies were enrolling people in auto pay when they signed up to get the loan, which makes sense because it's a good way to make sure that you're going to get your money back if you're lending it to people. From a business perspective, I totally get that. But the problem is that if the money wasn't there when it was time for the payment to be made, the company would just keep trying again and again and again. And this resulted in a lot of overdraft fees for customers who were already having a hard time making all of their payments. In one instance, the CFPB found that a company tried to withdraw money 11 times in a single day. At $35 each for overdraft fees, that's around $385 just from that one company trying to get their money. It's crazy, and honestly, it's unproductive. It doesn't help the company get paid any faster, and it just makes life harder for the people who were already struggling in the first place. So back in 2019, the CFPB saw this and decided to introduce a new rule. This rule said that companies would be able to try to take their money twice. If both attempts failed, that company would not be able to try again until or unless the customer specifically authorized them to try another withdrawal. That way, customers wouldn't keep racking up these unaffordable fees just because they couldn't afford to make their payments. Now, of course, the payday loan companies did not like this plan at all. Their lobbyists immediately went to work filing lawsuits to stop that rule from taking effect. The rule was paused while the case worked its way through the courts, and it had to go all the way up through the Supreme Court before a final decision could be made, because obviously both sides were just appealing. And so the Supreme Court recently ruled against the payday loan companies. So those new rules are good to go, and they are expected to take effect in April of 2025. This will be a big help to people who have been hounded by these companies. I've been there. I get it. I know how frustrating it is. And on that note, if you're currently dealing with these constant withdrawals and you can't wait until April for relief, head over to lirlinks.com/stop for tips on how to revoke your authorization for automatic withdrawals. Now, I know there are a lot of companies out there that will tell you that once you're signed up for automatic payments, you can't stop them. You have to leave them. Been there, done that. You always have the right to revoke that authorization, and we'll show you how because I've had to do it myself. So just head over to lirlinks.com/stop to get that information. So with that said, let's move on. I know we have some other stuff this week. Independence Day is coming up soon, and that means freebies. So don't forget to swing by Krispy Kreme on the 4th of July to pick up your free donut. As long as you're wearing red, white, or blue, you'll be able to pick that up. And we have a list of other 4th of July freebies on our website as well at lirlinks.com/July. Okay, we've also found some new class action settlements that may be of interest to you. If you've bought certain Suave antiperspirant products, you may be, I'm tripping all over my words now. You may be eligible for around $10 or more. If you bought the Suave 24-hour protection powder aerosol or the fresh aerosol between January of 2018 and March of 2024, you may be eligible for a refund on that. They'll give you up to $9.87 if you submit a claim without a receipt. If you do have your original receipts, you can get a full refund for the full purchase price of up to 3 items. You just need to submit your claim at suavesettlement.com by July 15th. Now, if you used a debit or credit card at either Victoria's Secret, Pink, or Bath & Body Works between May 10th, 2021 and August 8th, 2021, there's a settlement that may apply to you as well. The lawsuit for this says that those companies printed too much of the credit card number on the receipts. So if you made a purchase in that time and you were affected, you can get a $15 voucher from each store that you shopped at during that time. You just need to file a claim at factaclassactionsettlement.com. And I think that's by July 16th. Okay. So we do have a bunch of local news for this week as well. Let's see what we've got here. In Arkansas, LIHEAP applications are opening on July 18th. You just need to apply with the community-based organization that administers that program in your area. You can find yours on the state website. In California, the city of Santa Ana has announced that customers will have a longer grace period before services will be disconnected for non-payment. Under the new rules, customers will have 60 days to pay their bill before service will be interrupted or discontinued. They will also send out additional notifications and create special assistance for qualified customers with specific hardships as well. So that's great. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors has approved a proposal to use $5 million to eliminate medical debt for some struggling residents. This money will be used in partnership with Undo Medical Debt, which is basically like RIP Medical Debt. They're a nonprofit that buys medical debt in bulk. They estimate that this program will eliminate medical debt for around 150,000 people. In Florida, there are several drive-through food pantry events being held in Pinellas County this summer. You can get fresh fruits, veggies, meats, and other staples from these giveaways. Those events will take place on July 13th, July 20th, July 27th, and August 3rd at several locations in St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and Palm Harbor. You can get an exact list on the Pinellas Juvenile Welfare Board website. In Illinois, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed a historic order to launch a Black Reparations Task Force. This group will be responsible for a comprehensive study and examination of all of the different ways that Black people in Chicago have been harmed. They will also make a list of suggested recommendations that could help undo some of that harm and set up some remedies. We'll see how that goes. It wasn't immediately clear what they're going to do with those recommendations, but we'll see what happens. So in Kansas, the Central Community Church in Wichita has completed a low-income housing complex for seniors. There are 48 homes divided into 12 apartment structures. It looks like they may have been fully rented out at this time, but I'm not 100% sure. So I wanted to let you know just in case you want to look into that. So in Michigan, there is still funding available for their water assistance program. This program can provide up to $3,000 toward your bills and up to $9,000 in metered plumbing repairs per home address. You must pay a residential water or wastewater bill for a metered service in order to qualify. You also need to have a household income that is under 200% of the federal poverty level or be participating in a means-tested program like SNAP, TANF, or SSI. If you're interested, you need to apply with the agency that administers this program in your county. Now in Missouri, 2 residents have sued to stop the guaranteed income program in St. Louis from moving forward. They allege that the plan to give $500 a month to low-income families violates Missouri's state constitution. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because this is the exact approach that was used to stop Uplift Harris in Texas. So the first payments under this program began quite a while ago. The plan was to continue those payments for 18 months. It is possible that this legal action could stop those payments just like it did in Texas. Unfortunately, we're probably going to see this tactic happening in different states as groups step up to try to stop those guaranteed income programs from happening. In New Jersey, the state is advancing a bill that would update their renter protection laws. Many people have moved into hotels for lack of better housing opportunities, and this has created a lot of confusion about the definition of a tenant and who is actually protected under state law. So under the new rules, someone living in a hotel would only be considered a tenant if they had lived there more than 3 months and updated their driver's license to the hotel's address or taken other steps. So we'll see what happens if this bill passes. In New York, the New York City Rent Guidelines Board has voted to approve rental increases starting in October 2024. 1-year leases could see an increase of 2.75%, and 2-year leases could increase by 5.25%. This means that low-income renters could have even less money available for basic necessities, so a lot of people are fighting back, and they're asking Mayor Eric Adams to freeze rents across the city. So in Ohio, the Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, also known as ABLE, provide people who are undergoing civil law cases with legal aid services. If you're going through a criminal case, you're usually entitled to a public defender, but that doesn't really apply in civil law cases. So this organization steps in to fill that gap. The cases may involve housing, education, or other civil issues. This organization serves low-income people in 32 different Ohio counties. Meanwhile, Parma City School District has also announced that they will start offering free school lunch to all students in the upcoming school year. In Washington, the Housing Authority of Grays Harbor has opened applications for their voucher waitlists. The applications will remain open until 4:30 p.m. on July 19th. You can apply even if you don't currently live in Grays Harbor, but you need to remember that those who already live or work there will receive a residency preference, and it will still probably take years to actually get housing because they open the wait list and then they let that go until anyway, it takes a long time. But you can apply for that online if you're interested. Meanwhile, a study by Publicola found that Washington state legislature is still requiring people to repay their benefits from the Aged, Blind, and Disabled Cash Benefits Program once they qualify for federal disability. Now, this was supposed to have ended back in October of 2023, but it appears that at the last minute there was an updating of language that said that that wouldn't stop until October of 2025. So that's still happening even though we thought it was over. So this is especially distressing because 30% of the people who receive those ABD benefits are homeless, and around 55% have a mental health related